Winston Churchill famously said, "You can always count on Americans to do the right thing, after they've tried everything else." What are some good examples that prove or disprove this quote's accuracy? In the specific context of WW2, the British warned the US upon entering the war to adopt the convoy system for shipping, but the US refused to, until they finally did because shipping losses to submarines became too high. The British also told the USA that bombers would need to have a fighter escort or would suffer horrendous losses on bombing missions. But the USA sent bombers in without escorts because they were convinced that they were sufficiently capable of defending themselves. The USA suffered horrendous losses on bombing missions until they started sending fighter escorts to protect them. From WW2 itself, after Britain had spent quite some time learning through costly trial and error the methods of escorting merchant ships through U-boat-infested waters, the U.S. Naval Command, particularly one stubborn admiral whose name I can't recall, proceeded to ignore all their advice for weeks to months. Hundreds of tons of merchant shipping from the U.S. were sunk due to insufficient escorts and convoy formations. Florida man stories can prove and disprove this. Why does this sound like someone's homework assignment? Not a great example, but another great quote by Otto von Bismarck: "God has a special providence for fools, drunkards, and the United States of America." There is nothing more odd than teaching American history to non-American students. Tuesday, Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Wednesday, slavery. The Voting Rights Act. Reminds me of this story, not sure if it's true or not, where this American soldier is returning from a war and can't find a seat. Eventually they find a seat being occupied by a woman's dog. He asks her to move the dog and she refuses multiple times. So he throws the dog out of the window. Then this British guy turns around and says, "You Americans get everything wrong. You use a fork with the wrong hand. You drive on the wrong side of the road, and now you've gone and thrown the wrong B***** out of the window. Pass me a cigar and a large bottle of brandy. I'm gonna take you out prematurely like your family." W.C. America passed a constitutional amendment to ban the sale and production of alcohol. Then they passed an amendment to reverse it after they realized they f***ed up. Democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried. Long form. Many forms of government have been tried, and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all-wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. Winston S. Churchill. I believe Churchill attributed the quote to someone else but can't find a reference. C.S. Lewis has some real gems. I am a Democrat, proponent of democracy, because I believe in the fall of man. I think most people are Democrats for the opposite reason. A great deal of democratic enthusiasm descends from the ideas of people like Rousseau, who believed in democracy because they thought mankind so wise and good that everyone deserved a share in the government. The danger of defending democracy on those grounds is that they're not true. I find that they're not true without looking further than myself. I don't deserve a share in governing a hen roost, much less a nation. The real reason for democracy is just the reverse. Mankind is so fallen that no man can be trusted with unchecked power over his fellows. Aristotle said that some people were only fit to be slaves. I do not contradict him, but I reject slavery because I see no men fit to be masters. TBF, it probably applied just as much to him as it did to Americans. Disprove. Native American policy. Prove. Eventually saying f*** it and going to war to end slavery. Disprove. M1 Garand. It wasn't the best infantry rifle we could have picked, but it was good enough and we could mass produce it enough. We were fully equipped with a main battle rifle 10 years ahead of everyone else in WW2. Just a couple of months ago, the wife of an American diplomat killed a 19-year-old biker in the UK and then ran for the hills. She has to answer for what she did. Killed a 19-year-old, told the police she wouldn't leave the country so she didn't get detained, and then immediately left anyway. Who would have thought that a diplomat's wife was untrustworthy? Bear in mind that when this happened to a US citizen, the country in question, I think Georgia, waived their diplomat's immunity, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison in the US. but when the shoe is on the other foot they don't have to play by the established rules. The good old USA banned pretty much everybody from Asia and the Asian Pacific from attaining full citizenship for ages, with some of the big examples being the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 and the Immigration Act of 1924. Then in the 1950s, the Soviets pointed out how hostile Americans were towards Asia, and suddenly the federal government had a completely different outlook regarding them. They only stopped being racist against Asians on an institutional level because it would help slow the spread of communism, not because racism is a bad thing. Churchill also asked a woman one time if she would sleep with him for $1 million. She said of course I would. He then asked, would you sleep with me for $50? She replied, Mr. Churchill, what kind of woman do you think I am? He responded with, that has already been established. Now we're just trying to figure out a price. The Civil War. They tried every kind of compromise to avoid a war, and finally it was a war that settled it. The Suez Canal crisis. An independent Egypt noted that the Suez Canal was in Egypt and nationalized it, paying all of the shareholders of the Suez Canal Company the current price of their holdings on the Paris Stock Exchange. Then the UK, Israel, and France invaded Egypt and seized the canal. The United States demanded they withdraw, and threatened to sell all the US Treasury's British bonds and wreck their economy. The US didn't blink, just condemned close allies for imperialistic behavior and threatened serious action to stop them, after which they withdrew. After this humiliation, the British and French empires gradually fell apart, and two allies against communism were greatly weakened, but it was the right thing to do. We didn't side with Germany in World War I. Many Irish and Germans American wanted America to side with Germany in WWI. Germany was the second most popular language in America until it was oppressed in the mid-1930s. Probably yet another thing Churchill never said. It's quite easy to make a Churchill quote. All you have to do is say something sassy in the right way. Winston Churchill. Have you ever slipped a finger in your ass whilst having a wank? I assure you normal wanks will never be the same again. Winston Churchill. Americans like me sometimes accidentally do the right thing. So ha. Nixon's impeachment. Everyone forgets that Nixon was very popular before he resigned. Hell, in 1972 he had been re-elected with 60% of the popular vote and a 550-17 electoral college victory. His approval ratings fell to about 25% after the Saturday Night Massacre, but only approximately 40% thought he should be removed from office. It wasn't until the tapes came out that a majority believed he should be removed. He resigned shortly after that. I think this applies less to Americans, rather than the human race as a whole. It's not meant to be accurate, it's meant to prove a point. Someone got an essay due tonight. The opioid overdose epidemic. Pharma companies and doctors pushed these opioid painkillers like there was no tomorrow. Everyone got hooked. They said, oh no, this is wrong, and cut back dramatically on their prescribing practices. The right thing to do? I'm not sure. This fueled demand for more opioids, and subsequently fentanyl analogs flooded the streets, usually disguised as in heroin. Since all these folks fell in love with their opioids, they got what they could. And with the nuance of the battle, many have lost their lives. People might blame the users, which I don't completely disagree with. However, if the demand was never increased by social acceptance of the pharmaceuticals, we would not be in this extreme of a position today. The fact that they don't use the metric system. Who needs it when we have freedom units? I can think of example that proves it slightly wrong. During Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971, you can read about why, but just wanted to include. It was not like a communist revolution, and Bangladesh was seeking to be a secular democracy. The United States took the side of then West Pakistan, now Pakistan, despite it being a very repressive regime and the Pakistani army committing genocide and genocidal rape during the war. The United States government was fully aware of it. American diplomat Archer Blood informed the government to the extent of the genocide through what is now called the Blood Telegram. To this day, the government of Pakistan does not recognize this, and neither does the United States. Tariff China and call on American companies to not do business there. Say what you will about the trade war and effectiveness of tariffs, but let me pitch this. How much have you seen goods increase in price in the US over the past 2 years? Because inflation has remained at a historic low of about 2.4%, meaning relative to pay, goods haven't really changed. Jobs have continued to grow. The stock market hasn't collapsed, etc. While in China the stock market has halved, exports are down significantly, jobs have moved out of the country, people have been forced to close their businesses due to lost sales, private debt forfeitures have increased steadily, etc. China is feeling this trade war whereas the vast majority of Americans aren't. I'd love to see other countries push back on them as well. Essentially anything that starts with war on drugs, war on poverty, war on childhood obesity, war on illiteracy, etc. Prove. People who want to lose weight, plastic wraps, creams, magic pills, teas, etc. Anything as long as it doesn't require healthy eating and exercise. America has done the right thing multiple times, but they have never launched 30,000 pounds of shit into orbit and then shot it down with a laser. Just the fact that that scenario remains unexplored means America hasn't tried everything else. I don't wish to insult those affected, but the fact that America I don't remember logistics. I just remember it happened rejected advice from Australia during that huge fire recently. Australia firefighters who deal with fires as severe as that one almost every year. Of course, they came back later and accepted the advice, which helped. The current NSW fires are not a reflection of the ability of the Australian fire response, rather of the lack of funding and support from our government. Iran. First you remove a democratic elected and probably Western-friendly possibly long-term stable president to reinstate the Shah, who ruled with terror and created the basis for a long-term enemy. This was all to secure oil, probably lots of oil, which was and still is very important. Reinstating the Shah showed a lack of vision. Then you support Saddam Hussein, another man of great stature, to start a war against Iran that costs many billions and many lives. But most of that money flows back to American weapon manufacturers. And those lives are not American, so who cares? Oh, and cheap oil. That war is lost or not won, but at least Iran is set back another decade or two, and Iraq is still more dependent on the US. Now you got an Iran that is out of control, although I still think the people of Iran are still a reasonable, rather liberal and friendly people, friendly to the West as well. But well, that doesn't matter, so you retract from the nuclear treaty so you know for sure that those nuclear bombs are coming. Verdict. The US probably haven't run out of stupid ideas, and certainly haven't done the right thing here. We're only now switching to renewable energy after companies realized it's more profitable in the next 20 years. The Bracero Project and Operation Wetback. In the 50s the United States government brought a bunch of Mexicans into the US to help with farming. They wanted to boost the economy. The living conditions of the Mexicans was horrible. Most had no running water and they were not allowed to go back to see their family. Eventually the farming economy grew, so the government decided to kick out all of the Mexicans. It was surprising because many planned to stay in the US to continue working. They wanted to finish as quickly as possible, so they grabbed anyone that looked Mexican and asked to see the birth certificate. Even if they were a US citizen but not carrying it on them, they were instantly deported back to Mexico. They were dropped off in the middle of the desert of Mexico, but near any cities. The president at the time, I forget who, called it Operation Wetback, which was a derogatory term getting the phrase wet from the Mexicans crossing the Rio Grande. Entering WW2. Japan attacked and Hitler declared war on them a few days later, so not really a choice. Would like to add, that was easily one of Hitler's worst decisions in the war. Prohibition. Do your own homework, bro. Here's where he missed. We don't try the right thing, or everything else. We try whatever serves our immediate interest. We being anyone with political power. We initially supported the Kurdish forces in Syria but are now leaving them to the wolves. I see a lot of jokes here, which is sad cause this sounds like a fun thought experiment regardless of the motivation. Personally, I would go with the fact that 90% of people will turn to Google or YouTube to solve their problems, and only after they've exhausted their choices to solve it themselves without, and sometimes with making it worse, will they actually see a professional to solve their problem. Of course, the easy target is always corporations that can and will do everything possible to cut costs, regardless of the moral implications. It's only after they get caught that shit gets done correctly. Prohibition and the drug war. Vietnam. People in US still pushing for socialism. Universal health care. We're Americans. We don't stop doing something because it's wrong. We keep doing it until it turn out right. Ed Wunkler on the Boondocks. Socrates said that democracy is the worst form of government, as the leader is decided by a bunch of ignorant and poorly knowledged peeps, which will never go well. I guess US have proven it time to time of not for themselves, for the world at least. America gives more money to foreign countries than anyone. The death penalty. Up until 2005, it was legal to execute minors. Eventually the whole f***ed-up practice will be abolished. But so many people being killed already. It's heartbreaking. We literally just repealed a century-old federal law allowing us to take Native American children to live in white institutions, as well as just force any Native to hard labor. The Respect Act or something. Heard it in passing on NPR.